Hey, Carlos and Chantel. How are you guys?
Hey, how are you?
Hey.
Yep, so I seen that you guys just went to Guadalajara, went to Mexico. How was the trip?
It was awesome.
It was amazing. We had a good time.
All right, so
Awesome,
this
man.
video, we're going to talk about this trip you guys took to Mexico and why you guys went.
Awesome.
What is the journey you're currently on for your legacy, and why are you choosing this route?
So Carlos and I are embarking on an in vitro process. When we got together, my tubes were tied. I was a single mom 2 times over, and by the time I turned 30, I was like, I'm done. Or so I thought. So then, of course, I met Carlos, and he had never had biological children. And so it was a desire of his heart, and therefore became a desire of my heart. So because my tubes are tied, we have made the decision to go straight to in vitro versus having the tubes untied, because the chances of the tubes being able to function properly is very slim. So he had already experienced that in his previous marriage, and we decided that we were just going to go straight for it.
Yeah, early on in our relationship, I had talked to her about having kids, more kids, because she had had 2. And knowing her tubes were tied, I'll never forget the day, because we were at a hotel and at an event, some kind of business event, I'm sure. And she literally steps out of the bathroom of the hotel room, and I'm sitting in the chair or something, and she's doing her makeup. And she stops and looks at me and goes, I want to have your children. I want to have your babies. And I was like, I lost it, man. It was really crazy. I did, because I was like, man, I didn't know that that was such a need and a desire that I had. But she said that to me, and I'll never forget too, because I saw a vision of a little boy and a little girl standing like next to her in that moment. And it was so crazy, because it's like yesterday. And you know what? That's like almost 12 years ago. Isn't that fascinating? It's crazy, but amazing, and I will never forget that day.
So what has been your guys' experience so far with the whole process?
Yeah, man, it's kind of crazy because I would say that we started, like the very prelim of the process started probably 2 years ago, year and a half ago. We went for like initial testing, make sure all of his swimmers are good, make sure my hormones are good. We did find out that I have a lower AMH level, which comes with age, right? So I'm 44. We went through the initial testing, and then we didn't do anything with it because life happened. We
were buying a house at the time.
We got into a busy season, and it just kind of got prolonged. And so we didn't actually start our first cycle until November of 2022. So we did 1 cycle of in vitro. It was pretty profound, and it was a pretty intense, fascinating experience for me personally.
In the first round, we literally got 3 eggs, and they were fertilized. The embryologist fertilized them with my sperm, and we had 2
that fertilized,
which then they're called embryos once they fertilized. So we had 2 surviving embryos, which is a crazy story by itself, like how important it is to understand that every single step of life is a battle, even at the very stage of embryos. So then those 2 embryos, we were like, do we put them both in? All right, here we are. We have 2 embryos. One's a little more developed than the other. I guess we're gonna do it. We're gonna put both in.
The doctor that did the fresh transfer, the retrieval and the fresh transfer, he was pretty
straightforward.
Yeah, very straightforward. Like, you know, he was just like, you need to put both of them in.
Put them both in. And again, the doctor came in and said, that's what I recommend. I don't mean to be straight to it, but just do it. Put them both in. We're like, okay, that's confirmation.
Burn the boats.
That's right. Burn the boats. Be all in. Put them both in. And
because
again,
of your age and all of
right.
those kind of circumstances.
Everything's kind of against us according to science and according to time and age, right? So
yeah. So we did.
We did.
We put them both in, and it was a really emotional time for us. Because they had me just kind of wait and lay And so, you know,
So I
Carlos had
played
his
some
hands over my
worship
stomach.
music and prayed for her and cried.
We both
and
cried.
We
you
got
know.
some pictures. It was pretty awesome. And we were definitely excited to say, like, yeah, this is it. This is it. She's pregnant, right? That's not
And it
true.
failed.
Yep.
So it didn't take. And so we were getting ready to start our retreat with a group of our clients down in Florida when we got the call that I was not pregnant and that it didn't take. And so
And it is a mourning process.
well, but I didn't really mourn.
Girl, you didn't.
I will say
we
that
went straight
because-
into work mode. We went to a retreat and
Yeah, so I was on work mode, so it kind of just enabled me to just like move straight into that. You know, again, I didn't really process fully. And then we came home and I had picked up a parasite.
we both did.
We had picked up a parasite somewhere in the travels. And so, you know, we decided not to do another round in January to let my body heal and
Give us some time
cleanse
to rest
and,
because we were
you know,
running to the toilet all the time for a couple of weeks.
yeah, it was crazy. Then February, we started another cycle. And halfway through the cycle, because they do monitoring, they do testing, all of my hormone levels. So midweek, I had to stop that cycle because my body was not responding. So I would say it was then that all of the real emotions came.
Definitely. Yeah, but it's a reality check of where we are in life. And yeah, so that's kind of been a little bit of the experience of in vitro leading up to the stem cell stuff.
So Carlos, I have to ask you, why is it so important for you to have a biological child?
Yeah, I think it's legacy. Because, you know, we've looked into adoption. We've looked into, you know, that somebody could carry the child. We've had all these recommendations by a lot of different people. But what I realized what's super important to me is that she have my baby. And so, like, we're going to do everything. We're going to pull out all the stops. We're going to do everything possible to see that happen. And if that's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. But we're going to do everything in our power. You know, I'm a man of prayer, a man of faith. And I believe that God has given us tools and strategies and skills and abilities to be able to see that happen. And part of that is where then stem cell comes in, because I want to have a baby with her. That's the reality. It's so crazy. I want to know, what would this child be like that's a combination, has my DNA and Chantel's DNA. It's not even about personality, because our daughter, who's 14, that I've raised since she was a year and a half, she definitely has our personalities. But it's really, really important to me. There's something about DNA, bloodline. And believe me, Mateo, our 23-year-old, Hazel, our 14-year-old, they're my children. I'm adopting them. They're adopted by me. I take responsibility for them. I love them with everything that is in me. And I would do anything for them. But the reality is, there's something about DNA. There's something about knowing that my blood and her blood are combined to create that child. And so that's what I want.
Yeah, and I think the question comes up because in the fertility world, when your eggs have aged to the point that they are, and you're dealing with that kind of thing, the next suggestion is a donor egg. Yeah. It's always their go-to. It's across the board what they suggest. And so we had to really evaluate that. Like, is that something we're willing to explore? Even if we were to use one of Hazel's eggs, it would still be attached to me. But Carlos is like, no, it's the unique blend of you and I. That's my desires. That's my heart's desire. So if that is not possible, then it's something that we'll lay down to rest. But it is possible. And there's technology that is showing us that it's possible.
Super cool.
So how did you guys end up making the plan of deciding of trying the stem cell procedure?
Yeah, so it was February when it was a very tender conversation with the nurse and she mentioned that Dr. V, who is my fertility doctor, Dr. Verdiales, that she is pioneering some stem cell stuff, and that she would talk to me about it later. So she scheduled an appointment for a phone conversation with Carlos and I, and Carlos had booked the flight to New York, which is where the whole retrieval and fresh transfer goes down as far as this fertility clinic. He had booked it, he had booked the Airbnb, and so it was heartbreaking. And then it was also like, oh crap, so we have flights booked, we have Airbnb booked, we have all of this stuff. And so Carlos decided that we needed to go anyways.
Yeah.
And so we did. We just shortened the amount of time. We utilized that time to really kind of process this whole scenario.
Yeah, exactly. Evaluate,
emotionally to
evaluate whether we wanted to keep going. What are we doing this for? Why are we doing this? What's the purpose?
You know, we're holistic people. We don't do medication. We don't have a doctor. We are very much natural people.
Yeah.
And so, you know, it's a lot when you consider fertility medication and what it does to your body and your hormones and all of those factors, right? So we had to reevaluate. We had to reevaluate and kind of come to a place where we were like, okay, so, you know, what are we going to do?
And so, to say whether or not we're all in, right? Are we all in? Then let's just keep going. And I appreciate Dr. Verdialis. Like, a little backstory, we came to meet her through CNY, which Dr. Kiltz is the founder of CNY, and her practice is underneath him, kind of like a franchise type situation. And so Dr. Verdialis, we met her through CNY, but now we have a conversation with her, and there's a separate thing that she does outside of CNY with her business and her clinic called Restora Health. Yeah. And so that's where then that came in to where she presented to us, hey, we're taking a second trip as pioneers to go do this stem cell stuff.
So she's obviously excited about it, right? Because she's been doing the research with this particular doctor in Mexico. She's been down there. She's vetted the laboratories, the hospital facilities, all of these different aspects. And she took a group down in January and was seeing great results with that group. So our phone conversation happened while we were in New York, just kind of regrouping. And, you know, she's obviously very excited about what she's seeing and, you know,
results she's already had. Yeah, some of the crazy stories that she told us was how there's a woman in her 50s that had already started menopause, no longer having a menstrual cycle or period, and that through the stem cell process that she had done in January, she had started to have her period again and was actually ovulating again, which is producing eggs again, which was crazy. So it had actually reversed the menopause,
and
which
another,
is pretty awesome.
You know, kind of my age woman, right, who was seeing her hormone levels create cysts on her ovaries, which was a challenge, you know, in fertility when she's trying to have a baby. Through the stem cell process, is seeing her ovaries clear up from the cysts. Like the cysts are no longer there, right? So those kind of things are really wild. So stem cell research has been used for a number of things, but they haven't been using it for fertility. And so this is kind of a new pioneer that she's heading up, and she's passionate about it, which we love, of course.
Yeah. And we're actually excited because, again, we don't need to go into the details on this because we're not the experts. We just know the stories and what inspired us. But we're going to get the opportunity. Dr. Verdialis agreed to be able to let us interview her and ask her the questions on video, so we could actually, those people who are following us could get more information. But one thing to note is in stem cell, there's a lot of different research, but it's specifically about placenta stem cell. It's the stem cells that comes from the placenta. That's what this was that we did.
Yeah.